And it looks like we have all the committee members present. So you want to let everybody in, we'll get started?
Okay, that's very good. Please feel free.
Okay.
Okay. Is everybody now on board, invited and present?
Have one more joining right now. There we go.
Okay. Mark, Susan. Well, very good. At this time, I'd like to open the Ad hoc Improved Streets Committee meeting dated November 12, 2020. And at this time, we'll take roll call.
And just as a reminder, when we do the roll call, we just want to announce the city and state that you're in.
That's correct.
Scott Moore.
You say me? Scott,
Yes.
I'm present, Birmingham, Michigan.
Pierre Boutros.
Here in Birmingham, Michigan.
Jason Emmerich.
He's
Michael
absent.
Fenberg. Okay, Michael Fenberg.
Here, Birmingham, Michigan.
Katie Schaefer.
Here at Birmingham, Michigan.
Stuart Sherman.
Here, Birmingham, Michigan.
Janelle Whipple Boyce.
Here, Birmingham, Michigan.
Great.
Well, very good. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we do have minutes from the previous meeting. And at this time, we all received those minutes, and I must say, I really enjoyed reading them. They're very well put together and certainly reflect our committee's meeting and thoughts. That said, have we all had an opportunity to read them? If so, do I hear a motion to approve those approve those minutes? I'm sorry.
So moved.
We have a
Second.
And we have a motion, we have a second.
God, for the purpose of the minutes, maybe we'll just give the name of the person who made the motion and the person that made the second. So I think
Yes, I made the motion.
Yes, okay,
Commissioner Sherman
And
and
I
Janelle,
seconded the motion. Janelle.
very good.
thank you.
Okay, I'll call
Alrighty.
the roll. Stuart Sherman.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I'm the captioner and I need to be assigned to captions.
Oh, hold on.
Thank you.
Do we have any need for discussion on the minutes? Any need for clarification, information, deletions, additions?
Well, I think the motion was made. We're just waiting for the captioner to be assigned.
Okay. Are we ready to proceed to a vote then? I'm not hearing very well here. Okay,
So
those in
Stuart
favor?
Sher-
we do
I
a
have to
roll
take
call
the
vote?
roll. Yeah. Stuart Sherman.
Yes.
Janelle Whipple Boyce.
Yes.
Pierre Boutros.
Yes.
Michael Fenberg.
Yes.
Scott Moore.
Yes.
Katie Schaefer.
Yes.
Okay, a little bit about tonight. Tonight is our second public engagement meeting. This committee has been meeting close to 3 years. There have been some interruptions due to other city business, but this committee is top-notch. We are all the citizens of this city. We have all been civically minded over many, many years. And if you look at the composition of this committee, it's certainly impressive. We have worked hard. This is a citizen up type of committee. It is the citizens will take ownership of this committee and ultimately its report. Why is that important? It is because we have come to understand as a committee that if we go about what we recommend, it'll be the largest infrastructure project in the history of this city and the most expensive. As such, the report and the recommendations we make to the City Commission should come from the citizens. It is not a project that will take place over a year or 2 years. It is a project that will take place over a generation. And for that reason, we have taken this time and this project very seriously. And at this time, if At this time, I'll turn it over to Joe Valentine. I think we have a review of where we've been so we can bring everybody up to speed as to what we've been doing and where we are.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Moore. Appreciate that. This is the second public engagement meeting for this committee to review the draft plan that the committee had put together. We'll walk through, give an overview this evening of the plan and the recommendations and the amendments that were made at the last meeting that are now in this draft report. So to begin, I'll share the screen here so we can start a presentation, and we'll walk through an overview of the draft plan and the efforts of the committee. Oops. So can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so just to recap, this is a citizens committee of 7 members of the community, 2 of which are members of the city commission. Those are Pierre Boutros and Stuart Sherman. We have 3 residents living on an unimproved street. Those are Michael Fenberg, Katie Schaefer, and Scott Moore. 1 resident member living on an improved street, that's Janelle Whipple-Boyce, and 1 member with a background in road design, and that's Jason Emerine. This committee has been hard at work to advance this report. This report and this committee was set up with the specific scope, and we'll just review that quickly here as we kind of give a prelude to what we're getting into. So the committee, as set up by the commission, was tasked with several initiatives. Fundamentally, it's to develop a long-term plan on how to best proceed in addressing unimproved roads in the city in accordance with the following provisions. First, to review the history and evolution of the road system in the city. Second, to review and evaluate the types of roads in the city while considering road durability, maintenance cycles, drainage, rights-of-way usage, traffic speeds, and parking. Additionally, to review the policies and procedures attributed to each type of road construction and maintenance method used by the city. Also, to review conditions where small sections of unimproved roads exist within a predominantly improved block and provide recommendation. Also, to review conditions where large areas of unimproved roads exist within a neighborhood and provide recommendation. To review and evaluate cost and budget implications of any proposed recommendations and include strategies to fund those alternatives. Lastly, to compile the committee's findings and recommendations into a report to be presented at the end of the committee's term. Again, we're looking at the second draft of the committee's work. Fundamentally, there are some policy recommendations that have kind of surfaced through this process. Those are basically to change the initiation process so projects are initiated by the city and not by petitions from the homeowners. There's been a lot of discussion early on that the current process used to petition, having homeowners petition the city to initiate the improvement was not an effective way to move this process forward. So
Joe, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just realized that the meeting is not recording.
I think Eric is recording the meeting.
It is not recording. It would say in the upper left-hand corner.
Okay. Stand by.
I am recording it on Vimeo though.
Right, but I need the audio.
All right, stand by.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we had one of the policy recommendations was to focus on the utilization of concrete for new improved streets, but allow for consideration of asphalt as an alternative road surface at the determination of the city engineer when reviewing certain factors such as long-term costs, maintenance requirements, limited use areas such as courts and dead-end streets that experience less traffic. And finally, to fund the road improvement through the use of general fund transfers for the actual street improvements, and then to utilize bond funding for the water and sewer improvements. So those are kind of the fundamental categories of the recommendations we'll be reviewing this evening. Oops. Okay. Just quickly on the problem definition, the city has various categories of streets. The unimproved street category is the one we're talking about, which is commonly referred to as Cape Sealed streets. we have 26 miles of these streets, which are effectively gravel roads that have a slurry seal that provides some structure to the road, but it's not an engineered street, so it doesn't move water as other streets do. It's not graded, and it's not designed to accommodate drainage or remove ponding. So it's a common complaint for many residents that live on these streets. Additionally, there's a short-term maintenance cycle that is required to keep these streets viable. It's typically 7 to 10 years, and those costs are attributed to the homeowners through special assessments for the ongoing maintenance of these unimproved streets. And additionally, as we mentioned earlier, in order to improve these streets, currently there is a 51% petition that's required to be presented to the city by the homeowners on the street in order to improve the street. So again, we have three main categories of streets within the city. We have unimproved streets, which are again our Cape sealed streets, improved streets, which are typically concrete or asphalt, and then we have unimproved streets that have curb and gutter on a handful of those streets. Here, this is just a representation of those streets and how they're represented in the city. So if you look at the red lines, those are the unimproved streets, and the red lines with the blue bars on the outside represents the unimproved streets with curb and gutter, and all the other remaining streets would be improved streets that the city actually maintains going forward. As a comparison, there's some differentiations between the two, and we'll walk through those here quickly. Fundamentally is the initiation of how those improvements are made. So to become an improved street, it requires, again, 51% of support from the homeowners on the street through a petition process that's submitted to the city. On Cape sealed streets, they are nominated by the city based on ongoing review of the condition of those roads, and then slated in a priority for improvement through the Cape Seal program. Project factors such as cost allocation are attributed to 85% to the homeowner for improving the street, and 15% is paid by the city for that improvement. Similarly, for a Cape sealed street, which is the temporary maintenance program, 85% of that cost is also paid by the homeowners on a cycle of every 7 to 10 years, and 15% is paid by the city. For corner lots where you have the potential to be billed twice, there is a reduction for the long side of the property line that is 33% paid by the homeowner and 67% paid by the city. And then similarly for Cape sealed streets, it's 25% paid by the homeowner and 75% paid by the city. Now with the special assessment process for converting an unimproved street to an improved street, there is a 10-year cycle for paying the assessment. With regard to the Cape Seal improvement, it is a 30-day payment upon receipt of the invoice. So for the one-time assessment for improvement, you have a 10-year window, but for the maintenance cycle, which is obviously less, you have a 30-day payment period. Now the maintenance frequency for asphalt is between 20 and 30 years. And for concrete, you're looking at 40 years plus. Now the variable there is the maintenance that's provided to that street and the utilization. Again, from a Cape Seal standpoint, you have 7 to 10 years for the life cycle of that street. And it's more of a maintenance program when it's done to resurface it, but not address any of the underlying structural issues or design issues that would necessarily be needed when you redo a street. The water and sewer improvements typically are upgraded with the project when you convert an unimproved street to an improved street. But when you're doing a Cape Seal maintenance, the water and sewer improvements, because it's every 7 to 10 years, are not taken into consideration. Drainage, which is addressed when you convert an unimproved street to an improved street, is abated. However, with the Cape Seal program, because you're effectively dealing with a gravel road and you're just skimming the road and putting a new seal on it, those problems are not addressed. Additionally, for those streets that have that are improved, you typically have leaf pickup that's provided by the city, that's put into the street next to the curb. But for those Cape sealed streets that don't have the curb, the leaves must be bagged. Speaking in regard to the petition process, this again is a process that's initiated by a resident or the residents on the street to begin the process. Then it is determined the exact scope of work by the engineering department and working with the residents on the street. The residents are then provided with a petition that they would have to circulate to their neighbors to secure 51% in support of the improvement. At that time, an informational packet is created and distributed to the homeowners on the street, and an informal meeting, informational meeting is provided with the residents to go over the costs and associated changes that would result on the street. Following that meeting, if there's still 51% in favor of it, then a petition would be presented to the city for approval. Again, the cost for paving, the resident would be responsible for 85% of that cost. And there would also be an assessment for the drive approach for replacement, the sewer lead, depending on the age, and water service, depending on the age. However, if that water service is a lead water service under the new lead and copper rules, that would be replaced at the cost of the city. The city then expense on that assessment would be 15% of the paving assessment, and the city pays for all upgrades to the public water and sewer mains. In evaluating the types of road surfaces, the city had engaged OHM advisors to do an assessment, and that assessment is included in the report, speaking to the differentiation between concrete and asphalt. Concrete being considered a rigid pavement generally has a longer surface life than asphalt. Initial construction costs are higher because of the material and prep work that's involved in that. Construction duration is a little bit longer because of the curing processes that are involved with concrete over asphalt. The positive side is obviously it generally requires less frequent maintenance on concrete streets. On asphalt streets, it's more of a flexible pavement. Generally has a shorter lifespan than concrete. Initial construction costs are a little bit lower, and the construction duration is shorter than concrete because it can be poured and rolled and put back into service within a few days. The downside is that generally requires more frequent maintenance throughout the life cycle of that street. The Cape Seal program is the maintenance program that we have on our unimproved streets. That's needed again every 7 to 10 years. It does not address any of the deficiencies with the street with regard to the grade or pitch, and does not resolve any water collection issues that may exist. Now we'll talk about the funding overview, and I will turn it over to our Finance Director, Mark Gerber.
Good evening, everyone. We'll go over some of the points regarding the funding for roads. The current sources for providing the funding for local roads is Act 51 funding from the state of Michigan. This is money that is received through the fuel and weight taxes that are paid at the pump, and the vehicle registrations that are paid when you get your license for your vehicle. In addition to, the state has funded a little bit of the road funding from the general fund, the state general fund as well. Property taxes, probably not a lot of you realize this, but approximately 20% of your property taxes go to help with road maintenance and improvements in the city, both in the major and local streets. And then in mostly in the local streets, we have special assessments, which are money that is derived from certain property owners that benefit from roads that are improved, either through improving unimproved streets or when a Cape Seal is performed. Go ahead, Joe, with the next one. When, as Joe had talked about earlier, whenever a road is improved, that's the time that we usually get in there and also update the water and sewer infrastructure. That is paid by the utility users through water and sewer bills. And we give the residents the opportunity to update their individual service lines, whether that be water or sewer while the road is open, and are also those are also special assessed for that cost. So when we're talking about updating these unimproved roads, to give you an idea of the cost that we are talking about, Mr. Moore had explained that this is one of the largest projects that the city's ever undertaken, and that is certainly true. To update 1 mile of road in today's cost is approximately 2.3 million. To replace the water main that's associated with it, it's approximately 1.1 million. And the sewer line replacement, depending on if it's just sanitary or if it's stormwater as well, can range approximately to 1.15 million. So the total cost per mile is approximately $4.5 million. If we're talking about 26 total miles of unimproved roads in the city, we're talking that the total cost of doing all of these roads is approximately $118 million in today's dollar. So the question becomes, how do we pay for this? The current way that we fund for roads is in water and sewer projects. Is not going to be sufficient to pay for this type of improvement and also keep up with our current road improvement infrastructure. There's just not enough money that is generated from all those different sources to accomplish this. So the committee requested then that we look at possible other sources of funding to help do these projects. We looked at grants, a property tax millage, and bonding. When you look at grants, there really is no grants available for local road type of improvements. They're just, most of the grants are focused on high traffic roads, and these kind of individual local roads are generally not available for them. The property tax millage, the city currently is at the maximum that it can levy under state law. So while some other communities can levy for road millage because they're under their maximum that they can levy under state law, we cannot do that. So that leaves us to the option of bonding. Bonding is a way that we could try to get more of the improvements done over a period of time. They can be used for road, water, and sewer improvements. However, if we're talking about doing debt for roads, there is concern that this would not be something that would be a general debt obligation. I doubt that that would be successful in any kind of debt millage, similar to what we had for the Parks and Rec bond issue just lately. That would be something that all the residents would want to pay for the roads of certain property owners. So I'm not really sure that is an option unless that debt was going to be paid back by special assessments of the individual property owners. Go ahead, Joe. So if we're going to do bonding, again, it would have to be for, probably would have to be for special assessment bond issues for the road aspect. In terms of the water and sewer, this would totally be an option. In fact, we currently are finished now with our sewer improvement bond issue that we did 20 years ago. And so that would certainly be an option to do that. And that could be paid out of either utility rates or another property debt millage. Alternatively, if choose not to bond for this kind of improvement with water and sewer. Certainly, you could raise water and sewer rates to increase the additional funding that you would need for those kind of improvements.
Okay, thank you, Mark. That takes us then to our policy recommendations that have been formulated throughout this process. There are fundamentally now 10 recommendations that the committee is presenting. We'll walk through those here briefly, and then we'll talk about some of the changes that have occurred since the last meeting we had. So first, the committee is recommending that revisions to the initiation process be made to simplify the start of the process, increase awareness, and address the concerns with creating logical boundaries. Next, the committee agrees that the billing process should remain unchanged, and that's the ratios used in billing from the 85 and 15% allocations for the special assessments. Next, the committee conducted a thorough review of the surface types and road design options that are discussed in the report on the trade-off analysis section, and agree that concrete is the recommended surface for replacement, with the understanding that final determination for material to be used will be made by the city's engineering department. Committee recognizes an opportunity to revise the initiation process so that the city initiates the projects based on a ranking system and eliminates the need for homeowners to initiate a project and gather a majority of signatures from their neighbors. The petition option will remain available for homeowners interested in pursuing a project prior to the city's initiation timeline. So if a street wanted to advance the timeline by which they were slated for having their street improved, they could petition to have that done. Otherwise, the city would be initiating these projects based on a evaluation of the water, sewer, as well as the street condition, and prioritizing those accordingly. The city engineering department will prioritize those projects based on that infrastructure ranking system. The city will begin initiating road conversion projects based on this ranking system and incorporating them into the 5-year capital plan that the city has. Homeowners will again retain their ability to petition to advance to have their street done more quickly where possible. The committee recommends a pay-as-you-go approach, as Mr. Gerber had outlined, suggesting that the road piece be funded out of the general fund with available funds, and then supplemental funding from bonds for water and sewer work that would also be required on those streets. In regards to what would be required to accomplish that by reverting the petition process from the resident initiation format to the city, the actual city code and charter have sufficient language already that allows for that to happen, so no formal modifications will be needed in those areas. Again, the committee has formalized that the city engineer will make all determinations regarding the appropriate pavement material to be used for the improvement projects. And the committee recommends that the engineer will, I think we had a redundancy there. Again, we'll make that determination. And then finally, the committee recommends that all street improvements shall be charged to residents in the same percentages as the city currently uses. Streets that require a substantially increased cross-section or pavement width will be reviewed by both engineering and finance departments of the city to determine the excess costs resulting from those changes. And that excess amount shall not be included in the sum used to determine the resident's payment for special assessments. Meaning that there's a kind of a baseline cost and a baseline standard for these street improvements. And if there's a need to make it beefier or expand it for some reason that is initiated by the city, that those supplemental costs would not be passed on to the homeowners. So with that, we'll kind of refer you back to the report and highlighting some of the changes that were made based on public comment at the 2 meetings ago, where we presented this. And the first of those is on page 3, under section 2, where we're look at selection of road surface and design alternatives. And those changes are highlighted in red, and basically confirming the committee's recommendation that concrete be utilized for new improved streets, with the understanding that it is reviewed by the engineering department. The next fundamental change was on page 22. And again, this was in reference to the use of concrete being the new street standard, but allowing for some alternatives based on the discretion of the city engineer. Next, on page 26, we have the new recommendation that was formulated at the last meeting. And that's in regards to the percentages that are charged. This is just to recommend that all street improvements shall be charged to residents in the same percentages that the city currently uses. And moving ahead to page 66. Again, confirming through recommendation in the report that all unimproved streets being constructed be constructed in concrete, with the understanding that the final decision for material to be used for road improvements should be made by the engineering department. Next, on page 69, under project funding, there's a couple of bullet points there. This is where we created a Appendix F and established a cross-section of what the standard street would look like and how it would be constructed, and using that as the cost baseline for any changes that would occur based on need, if there is a requirement to beef up the street based on the traffic flows or weight requirements for how it's used. So we have added an Appendix F, and this is referencing that Appendix F as that cross-section standard. And then again, outlining that the cost associated with modifications initiated by the city to accomplish the needs for that street, that those costs would not be passed along to the homeowners on the street. However, if the residents on the street were to request that changes be made and those were to be granted, that those costs would be then shared to the homeowners on the street. And then lastly, we do have Appendix F, which again is that cross-section of the street outlining the kind of cost baseline going forward. So with that, Commissioner Moore, I will turn it off to you, or turn it back to you. I'll turn off our screen share here. And we would open it up to any questions. I think you're muted, Scott.
You're still muted.
Okay, am I back?
You're back.
Okay. As the city manager indicated, we had a public engagement session on, I believe, the 29th of October. That following week, we as a committee got together and talked about every comment that was made and every question. And out of that came some changes and some new thoughts. And since that review session, we have received some comments. And I know, Joe, you've received some comments, and I also received, I would say, a question and need for clarification. Sitting as city commissioner, I did answer the question because the question had been presented in a previous meeting as to the need for clarification. It had to do with the Headley Amendment. I declined to answer that question for a reason that we are in the public engagement phase. And I felt that it would be inappropriate for me to speak outside of our committee. Our committee speaks as a committee within the committee and with each other. But I did indicate to this city commissioner that once our report is final and turned over to the city commission, that I would be more than welcome, more than happy to receive any questions. Now, Joe, do you wish to speak on any comment or question that you received?
Well, just that we did include those in the agenda for your review this evening. Those are the last few pages of the agenda document. There's 2 emails that were received. one from a Mr. Robert Lavoy and one from David Laurie. So both
Okay.
of those are included in here for your review.
All right. Now, before I open up this meeting for public engagement, public questions, comments, what have you, please know that your comments will be taken seriously. Your questions will be taken seriously. Your suggestions will be taken seriously. We are going to meet as a committee a week from now to review everything that's happened tonight. And again, put together, hopefully by then, a final draft to be submitted to the city commission. So we welcome any input that can be received tonight. Again, this is a document that's over 145 pages right now. It's very detailed, and there's some really great information in there if you haven't looked at it in detail. But we take it seriously. This is our report being, it's the citizens' report to the city. And as such, we welcome any input, comments, suggestions, questions. Questions, if you have a good question, hopefully we can answer it. We may not be able to answer it because it's a question that, quite frankly, we need to look further into. So good questions are good questions, but there's no stupid question either, because out of stupid questions come some great thoughts. Janelle.
I guess I'll start it off here. I think the revised report is really well done, and I think everything that we've discussed and after the public input has all been presented in here very well. I do have one question, and it has to do with an added piece that is on page 69, and I think in a couple other places, but I'll reference 69 for now. And it has to do with, Joe, what do you think would be an example of a specification that a property owner would be responsible for that's not related to the need of the standard street?
I think based on some of the prior conversation, the intent was if they wanted to widen the street and it wasn't necessary to widen the street, but if it was an elective of the residents on the street to widen the street, that those costs would then be shared with the homeowners on the street, because that wouldn't be required. It would be more of an amenity than a requirement. So they talked about the cross section being the standard baseline for cost. And then if it was initiated by the city, that the city would have to beef up the foundation, or for some reason beef up the width of the street, that those costs would be absorbed by the city. But if the neighbors on the street wanted to make modifications in the design, that those would be shared to the homeowners.
Is there a situation that we can think of that the neighbors would, I guess, let me say this differently. I think I would hope that with all this work that we've done, and this is just for everybody, I guess, not just you, Joe, but all the work that we've done, that we would have less occasion for neighbors to come and say what they want, and put city commission in a position to be going against recommendations of other boards, like the multimodal board, for example, and now this document. Do you think by having this language in here, does anyone think by having this language in here that we're, sort of inviting people to come and request to have wider streets or different amenities or different pavement colors or anything else that they can think of? I wonder if I read it as maybe sort of opening a can of worms. Just that one piece, about, obviously I understand that the city would pay for anything in the cross section that was above and beyond what a typical street is. And in that part of this recommendation, I really do support. But the piece about the neighbors paying for something different because they want it, do we want that in here? Do we even want that to be an option? Or do we leave it in here as an option just in case they do, because they probably sometimes will, no matter what?
I think it's a valid question, and it's a question that we've certainly been touching upon for many, many months. And maybe we need to go into that in more detail, but I would suggest that we go into more detail on that question as a committee when we do our review. Instead of debating that issue tonight, I think it needs to be debated and maybe more fleshed out when we meet together in a week from now. Janelle, do others feel the same or maybe not?
Mr. Fenberg had his hand up.
Michael?
Yeah, no, I agree. We probably should discuss it as a committee. And I just wanted to ask the question on that Exhibit F for that standard road design. Does that include room for bike lanes, or would that be something that is, again, determined by the city to be added because it's a bike route or something?
I think what you're looking at in the attachment F is just the standard cross section for the street. If you wanted to do a dedicated lane for bike lanes,
Yes.
then I think that would be one of those things that the city would initiate to say, we want to add a bike lane on this street, and we would use more of the right of way to accommodate a bike lane. If you're talking about just putting a sharrow on the road, then no, that would keep the same dimensions. But if you wanted to add a dedicated bike lane, then I think that's one of those categories that would be where the city would initiate the expansion of that street width, and those costs would then be absorbed by the city.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. It's open to the public. Yes. I'm sorry, Susan, please. Susan? Am I on?
I'm Susan. Yes, I'm Susan I'm Susan Randall at 1220 Saxon, Birmingham.
Right.
And I sent an email a few days ago with two items, I guess maybe for clarification. I noticed on the map, so I'm on the board of the Birmingham Farms Neighborhood Association. And so I noticed on the map that Latham was not designated as an unimproved road with curb and gutters between North Lawn and Saxon. It wasn't, I don't think it was designated as anything on that map.
Ms. Rendell, if you don't mind, Chairman, I was, you emailed me personally. Just to let you know, I had forwarded your email for clarification to our city manager who's with us now, and he immediately acted on it, and we got a response copied from city engineer and Mr. Austin Fletcher, and they are reviewing it right as we speak. As today's, actually, we had that conversation, Ms. Rendell, and they're correcting whatever needed on that map. And we appreciate your input and informing us of the situation. Joe, would you?
Let me just clarify.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the comments we received came in after the agenda went out, but the
Right.
question was that street an unimproved street based on what's on the map? So we were going to have the engineers validate that before we made any changes to the map. That's still in process. So once we do that, if we need to update the map, we will certainly do that. We just want to verify, because sometimes there's an understanding that it may be asphalt and and people may think it's Cape Seal, or it might be Cape Seal and people think it's asphalt. So really to go out and make sure we know what we're working with before we update any maps. But yeah, that is under review.
Okay, and then my other question was, in a point made in the last meeting was that there were two types of roads in Birmingham, Cape Seal and concrete, but asphalt wasn't mentioned. Or is that the same as Cape Seal? Because Saxon, I believe, is asphalt, not Cape Seal.
Yes, so
we have three types of roads in Birmingham.
we have two types of roads, but certain ones have different categories. So fundamentally we have improved, which is concrete or asphalt, and then we have unimproved, which is the Cape Seal. Now the asphalt or the concrete roads are engineered roads that are designed. The asphalt roads or the Cape Seal roads are the ones that aren't engineered or designed to really move water or have a pitch of any kind. So I'm sorry, you said you're on Saxon?
Right.
I believe Saxon are asphalt streets, so those are considered improved streets, even though they don't have a curb and gutter.
I'm sorry, but my internet's breaking up, so I didn't hear the clarification, but I will just say that our Saxon, we have been told by Austin Fletcher and Joe, or I used to work with the Paul O'Meara before, that it is an unimproved road, but I believe it's asphalt.
Again, we'll take a look at your road to make sure that the understanding is correct. So we'll
Okay,
review
my
that.
internet's locked. My internet's, it's locking again. So the little bit that I heard, it sounded like our road didn't fall into any category.
Well, I
Yeah.
think the presumption is that it may be something different, so.
Okay.
We'll verify what you have out there to make sure it's in the correct category.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Susan, Saxon is a lot like Derby Road. It's sort of jurisdictionally, you're Beverly Hills, Birmingham, and Derby is Troy and Birmingham. And it gets complicated. North Lawn is another one. People don't realize that the side of Birmingham Country Club is actually Bloomfield Township. And yet, so over the years, the history of Saxon and North Lawn and certainly Derby has been, well, complicated. And it's been difficult to ascertain. So bear with us because we understand that. We're aware of that. And we're going to be doing our best to help determine what's best in terms of the cross-jurisdictional thing and all that kind of stuff. It's an interesting history because, and in some respects, we can't reproduce it. And, but we're doing the best we can, and we certainly understand the kind of tension that road presents for the residents on both sides of that road. So we're aware of that. But thank you.
Recall
Thank you.
correctly, I think there was a road project that was done, initiated by the residents of Beverly Hills
Right.
last year or 2 years ago, that took into account some of the crossings over there as well. So we'll have to look at that.
It's
was-
been fascinating.
That project was done by Beverly
We
Hills.
just don't want to be forgotten. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Others, please.
May I have a question?
Coco.
Is that jurisdictional issue the same problem that Abby has?
Well, yes, it is. Yes, it
Thank
is.
you.
There's another one. That's it,
Yeah.
exactly. And I walk Abby almost every day, Coco, and I don't know why I didn't mention that, but you're absolutely correct.
Yes, and of course, it's an interesting one because between Adams and about halfway up, it's all Birmingham on both sides.
Right.
And then it reverts to being Bloomfield Township on both sides,
Right.
all the way to Woodward.
Right.
Thank you. I wondered about that, if that had been addressed in the report.
Well, wasn't addressed directly in the report, but we have a listing of those kind of streets. For instance, Glenhurst is one part of it is Birmingham, now another part of it is the village. But so we have these kind of things. But yes, Abbey is one. Definitely, Abbey is one.
We
that needs
refer
be
to
looked at. I mean,
days like today, we refer to the front of our house
was
as
it
Lake
addressed
Abbey.
directly in the report? No. Yeah, Abby, I mean, was it addressed directly in the report, all of these roads? No. And it's a good question.
On days like today, when it's been raining, we refer to
people
the
aware.
front of our street as Lake Abbey.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
Good to see you.
And that is very true, especially where your house is. But I think it's something that our committee is going to have to address in terms of including, though we're aware of the issues, of the jurisdictional issues, we really did not specifically import it into the report. So I think that's a question that we need to address. Though you're aware, Coco, that when it comes to these jurisdictional issues, traditionally, and going back to the time you were certainly on the commission and the like, those kind of issues have been able to be worked out amicably most, if not all of the time between the jurisdictions. But they need to be at least announced in the report. Good point. Others? Anybody else? Well, certainly we have some work to be done next week at our review session. And again, if others are listening to this meeting tonight or have had time to review our latest draft over the next several days, feel free to contact the city. And your comments, your suggestions, your questions will be known to this committee and will be addressed before we submit a final draft, a final report, I should say, to the city commission. So again, do I hear any further public comment or discussion, need for clarification or the like? Okay, seeing none. Joe, do we announce our next meeting for the public?
Yeah, if you have no other comments and I don't know if there's any committee comments. Then yeah, your next meeting, if you want to announce that.
Okay, I believe our next meeting, which will be on November 19th, beginning at 7 o'clock. And this will be a meeting of the committee, and it is certainly open to the public. But it'll be hopefully, it may not be, but hopefully it'll be our last committee meeting before we submit a final report to the city commission. Though we do have some work to be done, as suggested tonight by Janelle and certainly by Coco and Susan. I think that we need to address these concerns and any other concerns or comments that come in during the next week. Is there anything else that needs to be done tonight? Then it's appropriate then I take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Pierre and a second by Stuart, I believe. Any need to further this meeting? Seeing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Laura?
Boutros,
Yes.
Stuart Sherman,
Yes.
Melissa Boyce,
Yeah.
Michael Fenberg,
Yes.
Scott Moore,
Yes.
Katie Schaefer.
Yes.
I want to thank all who are here tonight. This has been a great, and it continues to be a great undertaking, a tremendous undertaking. And I just want to thank everybody. And committee, we'll see each other next week. And feel free for those who joined here tonight, feel free. Many thanks and have a good evening. Bye now.
Thanks, Scott.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.